Tonight, I want to take you to a place where history never truly sleeps, where footsteps echo even when no one is walking, and where unseen eyes seem to follow every visitor. This place is Fort Mifflin in Pennsylvania, an old military fort that once protected a nation, but now protects its secrets. Imagine the fort during wartime. Cannons roaring, soldiers shouting, smoke filling the air. Young men stood on these walls, knowing they might not see the sunrise again. Many of them died here, some in battle, some from disease, some from despair. Their bodies were buried, but people say their souls never left. Years later, when the fort became quiet and the war was long over, strange things began to happen. Guards reported hearing boots marching across the stone floors at midnight. They followed the sound, but no soldiers were there. Just cold air and shadows stretching across the walls. One night, a caretaker walked through the old prison cells inside the fort. As he passed one dark corridor, he felt someone breathing behind him. He turned, expecting a coworker, but saw only a misty figure standing near the wall. The figure looked like a soldier, wearing an old uniform, his eyes empty, his face pale. When the caretaker blinked, the figure vanished, but the sound of chains dragging across the floor continued. Some visitors believe these are ghosts of the soldiers, trapped between life and death. Others whisper that Jinn may have settled in the fort, attracted by fear, sorrow, and the memories of pain. In Islamic tradition, Jinn are beings made of smokeless fire, unseen by humans, living in abandoned and haunted places. Fort Mifflin, with its dark tunnels and old cells, could be a perfect home for such entities. People who visit the fort at night say their cameras stop working, their batteries drain suddenly, and strange voices appear in recordings. Some hear whispers calling their names, even when they are alone. Others feel someone touching their shoulders, guiding them through the halls. There is a story of a woman who visited the fort during a paranormal tour. She felt dizzy and sat on a bench near the old barracks. Suddenly, she saw a tall shadow moving toward her. She tried to scream, but her voice disappeared. Later, when she checked her photos, she saw a soldier, like shape standing behind her, though no one was there at that moment. Whether these are ghosts of fallen soldiers or Jinn hiding in the shadows, Fort Mifflin remains a place where the past and the unseen world seem to meet, where every corner holds a story, and every shadow may be watching you. When we speak of Fort Mifflin, we are not just speaking about bricks, cannons, and old walls. We are speaking about a place built on fear, sacrifice, and countless silent deaths. Fort Mifflin stands on the banks of the Delaware River. And centuries ago, it was one of the most important defensive structures in early American history. Soldiers were stationed here to protect their land from enemies, but many of them never returned home. Imagine the late 1700s, when the fort was alive with tension. The sound of drums echoed across the river, soldiers marched in muddy boots, and commanders shouted orders through the smoky air. Young men, some barely older than boys, stood on the cold stone walls, staring into the darkness, waiting for enemy ships. They carried rifles heavier than their hopes, and many carried letters from home that they would never read again. During the Revolutionary War and later conflicts, Fort Mifflin became a place of suffering. Enemy attacks were brutal. Cannons fired day and night, shaking the ground so hard that the walls trembled. Soldiers were injured, burned, and torn apart by explosions. the wounded were brought into dark rooms inside the fort, where doctors had no modern medicine, only crude tools and prayers. Many died screaming in pain, their voices echoing through the corridors that still exist today. But death did not only come from battle. Disease spread quickly in the crowded barracks. Cold winters, hunger, and infections killed soldiers silently. Some prisoners of war were also kept inside the fort, locked in damp cells, forgotten by time. They sat in darkness, hearing water drip from the ceiling, feeling rats crawl across their bodies, and slowly losing hope. Many of them died alone, their names lost to history. People say that when someone dies with fear, sorrow, or unfinished emotions, their spirit may remain tied to that place. Fort Mifflin absorbed centuries of suffering, and some believe the land itself remembers every scream, every prayer, every final breath. At night, when the wind blows across the river and through the broken windows, it sounds like distant voices. Some say these are the echoes of soldiers calling for help. Others believe these are Jinn who witnessed the deaths and decided to stay. According to spiritual beliefs, Jinn are drawn to places where humans suffered greatly, where blood was spilled, and where emotions were intense. Fort Mifflin, with its dark tunnels and abandoned rooms, could be a doorway between worlds. Old guards who worked at the fort reported feeling watched, as if unseen soldiers were still standing at their posts. They felt sudden cold spots near certain walls, as if someone invisible was passing by. Some guards refused to patrol alone at night, saying they heard footsteps behind them, matching their own steps, but stopping when they stopped. Visitors walking through the fort during the day often feel a heavy atmosphere, as if the walls are listening. Tour guides tell stories of people fainting near the old prison cells, claiming they felt overwhelming sadness or fear for no reason. Psychics and paranormal investigators say the fort is full of spiritual energy, trapped between past and present. They say the spirits of soldiers still stand on the walls, still guarding the river, still waiting for a war that ended centuries ago. And some whisper that Jinn walk alongside these spirits, invisible to human eyes, sharing the darkness, feeding on the memories of fear, moving through shadows where no light reaches, watching every visitor who dares to walk through the silent halls of Fort Mifflin. As the years passed and the wars faded into history, Fort Mifflin became quiet, but its silence was never truly empty. When night falls over the fort, a strange transformation begins. The daylight tourists leave, the gates close, and darkness wraps around the old stone walls, like a living creature. That is when the footsteps begin. Security guards who worked night shifts tell chilling stories. They say that around midnight, when the fort is completely silent, they hear boots walking across the stone floors. Not soft footsteps, but heavy, disciplined steps, like soldiers marching in formation. The guards follow the sound with flashlights in hand, their hearts beating fast. But every corridor is empty. No one is there. Yet the footsteps continue, moving from one hallway to another, climbing stairs, then stopping suddenly, as if an invisible army has vanished into the walls. In the old prison cells, another sound is often reported: the dragging of chains. Visitors who take night tours swear they hear metal scraping across the floor. Some say they hear faint cries, like prisoners begging for mercy or calling for help. When investigators record audio in these cells, they sometimes find strange whispers on playback, voices that were never heard during the recording. The voices speak in broken words, sometimes in unknown languages, sometimes calling names that no one recognizes. Paranormal researchers believe these could be intelligent spirits, trying to communicate. But others believe these voices belong to Jinn. In many spiritual traditions, Jinn can mimic human sounds, imitate footsteps, and create whispers to scare or confuse people. Fort Mifflin, with its long dark corridors and underground tunnels, provides the perfect environment for such unseen beings to move freely without being seen. One guard shared a terrifying experience. While patrolling near the barracks, he heard footsteps behind him, matching his own pace. He stopped walking, and the footsteps stopped. He turned around, expecting to see a coworker, but the hallway was empty. Suddenly, he felt a cold breath on his neck and heard a whisper say his name. He ran out of the building and refused to return to that area again. Visitors also report hearing whispers, calling them from different rooms. Some feel someone walking beside them, even when they are alone. A few people have felt their clothes pulled gently, as if something unseen wanted their attention. When they turn around, nothing is there except darkness and the echo of their own fear. The wind inside the fort moves through broken windows and narrow passages, creating eerie sounds. But many witnesses insist that some sounds are too clear to be natural. They say they hear conversations, laughter, and commands like those given to soldiers, as if the fort is replaying scenes from the past, or as if invisible soldiers and Jinn are still living there, repeating their routines in another dimension. As the night grows deeper, the fort seems to wake up. Every step, every whisper, every metallic sound feels like a message from another world, reminding visitors that Fort Mifflin is never truly empty, never truly silent, and never truly at rest. Inside Fort Mifflin, there are places where the air feels different, where light seems weaker, and where shadows appear to move on their own. In these corridors and old cells, people have reported seeing something that cannot be explained. Apparitions of soldiers who look as real as living men, yet belong to another time. Late at night, when the fort is almost completely dark, some visitors claim to see a figure standing near the walls. At first, they think it is a guide or a guard, but when they look closely, they notice something strange. The figure wears an old military uniform, the kind soldiers wore centuries ago. The clothes look worn, torn, and faded, and the figure's face looks pale, almost transparent. When someone tries to speak to it, the figure slowly fades into the darkness, leaving behind only cold air and fear. One famous story tells of a caretaker who worked alone inside the fort. While walking through the barracks, he saw a soldier sitting on a bench, staring at the floor. Thinking it was a reenactor or a visitor, he asked if the man was okay. The soldier slowly lifted his head, revealing empty, hollow eyes, then stood up and walked through a solid wall, as if it did not exist. The caretaker dropped his flashlight and ran, unable to explain what he had witnessed. In the prison cells, shadowy figures are often seen standing near the doors. Some visitors report seeing hands gripping the bars, as if prisoners are still locked inside, waiting to be freed. Others see a tall, dark shape walking through the corridor, its outline shaped like a human, but its features completely unclear. When approached, the shape disappears, but a deep sadness fills the room, as if the spirit left behind its emotions. Paranormal investigators have captured strange images on cameras, figures that look like soldiers standing behind them, even though no one was there at the time. In some photos, a misty form appears near the cannons, shaped like a man looking out toward the river, as if still guarding the fort. These images have shocked many people, making them believe that the soldiers never truly left their posts. Some spiritual believers say these apparitions are ghosts, the souls of soldiers who died in battle and never found peace. Others believe that Jinn can take the shape of humans, especially in places filled with fear and sorrow. Jinn are known to appear in different forms, sometimes looking like people from another era, to confuse or scare humans. In a place like Fort Mifflin, where thousands of emotions are trapped in history, Jinn may easily take on the appearance of fallen soldiers. There is also a story of a woman who was walking alone in one of the tunnels. She saw a soldier walking toward her, carrying a lantern. She thought he was part of a historical reenactment and smiled. But when the lantern light touched his face, she realized his eyes had no life, no reflection. She blinked, and he vanished, but she felt someone standing beside her for several minutes, breathing slowly in the darkness. People who see these figures often feel extreme cold, fear, and a sense that they are not alone. Some claim the figures watch them silently, while others feel the spirits are trying to tell their stories, to remind the living of their suffering and sacrifice. As visitors walk through the old halls, they sometimes see movement from the corner of their eyes. Someone standing, someone walking, someone watching. But when they turn their heads, the corridor is empty, and only the shadows remain, silently moving across the walls of Fort Mifflin, as if soldiers and unseen Jinn still walk side by side in the darkness. Many people believe that Fort Mifflin is not only haunted by human spirits, but also inhabited by Jinn, unseen beings that exist in a world parallel to ours. The fort's dark tunnels, abandoned rooms, and centuries of fear and suffering make it the kind of place that, according to spiritual traditions, attracts such entities. Where humans felt intense pain, terror, and hopelessness, the invisible world is said to draw closer. In Islamic belief, Jinn are created from smokeless fire, invisible to human eyes, but fully aware of us. They live in deserts, ruins, abandoned buildings, and places where humans rarely go. Fort Mifflin, with its long history of war, death, and imprisonment, is the kind of structure where Jinn could quietly settle, watching humans from the shadows, moving through walls and corridors without being seen. Some visitors who are spiritually sensitive say they feel a strange presence that does not feel human. They describe a heavy atmosphere, as if something ancient and intelligent is observing them. They feel sudden fear without reason, their hearts racing, their thoughts becoming confused. Spiritual experts say such feelings can happen when Jinn are nearby, because their presence affects the human mind and emotions. There are stories of people hearing voices that do not sound like human ghosts. The voices whisper in strange tones, sometimes in unknown languages, sometimes repeating words in a distorted way. Paranormal investigators believe these voices could be residual spirits, but some religious scholars say Jinn often imitate human voices to scare or mislead people. In Fort Mifflin, where echoes already confuse the ears, such whispers become even more terrifying. Some visitors report seeing shadows that move differently from ghostly apparitions. These shadows are faster, more fluid, and sometimes appear taller or distorted, as if they do not fully belong to the human shape. People say they feel these shadows watching them from corners of rooms, standing behind doors, or moving across the ceilings. When light is shined on them, they disappear instantly. There is a story of a paranormal team that stayed overnight inside the fort. Around 3 a.m., one member felt someone sitting beside him. He could feel the pressure on the bench, but no one was visible. He started reciting prayers, and suddenly he felt the pressure lift, followed by a cold gust of air. Later, when they reviewed audio recordings, they heard a low, growling sound that none of them remembered hearing. Some believe Jinn are attracted to places where humans suffered intense emotions. Fort Mifflin was filled with fear, pain, anger, and despair for centuries. These emotions are said to leave spiritual imprints, creating an environment where Jinn feel comfortable. They may observe humans interact with energy, and sometimes show themselves as shadows, voices, or even soldier-like figures. Visitors who stay too long in certain parts of the fort say they feel drained, dizzy, or confused. Some feel sudden sadness or fear that disappears when they leave the area. Spiritual believers say Jinn can influence human feelings, especially in isolated and dark places. Fort Mifflin, with its underground rooms and narrow passages, creates a perfect environment for such psychological and spiritual effects. Some guards refuse to enter certain rooms at night, saying they feel a presence that is not human. They say it feels intelligent, watching, and aware of their fear. They hear footsteps that do not match any human pattern, and sometimes feel someone walking beside them, even when no one is there. Whether these beings are real Jinn, or just the imagination of frightened minds, Fort Mifflin remains a place where the line between the human world and the unseen world feels thin, where shadows seem alive, and where something invisible may be listening to every step, every whisper, and every heartbeat of those who dare to walk through its dark and silent halls. Many who visit Fort Mifflin come with cameras, recorders, and modern equipment, hoping to capture proof of the unseen. But often, the fort seems to resist being recorded, as if something there does not want to be seen or remembered. People say their devices suddenly stop working, batteries drain without warning, and screens freeze in the middle of recording, even when the equipment was fully charged just moments before. Paranormal investigators tell stories of setting up cameras in dark corridors and prison cells, only to find that the footage is missing or corrupted. Some cameras shut down exactly at the same time every night, often around the same hour when strange activity is reported. When they review the footage, they sometimes find unexplained shadows moving across the screen, or strange flashes of light that cannot be explained by dust or insects. Audio recorders are even more mysterious. Visitors who leave recorders in empty rooms often capture voices that no one heard at the time. These voices whisper, cry, laugh, and sometimes call out names. Some recordings contain faint military commands, as if unseen soldiers are still being ordered to march or stand guard. Others contain strange sounds that do not sound human at all, like low growls, distorted whispers, or sounds that resemble breathing very close to the microphone. Some spiritual believers think these recordings could be ghosts, trying to communicate using energy to leave their voices behind. Others believe Jinn may interfere with electronic devices. In many traditions, Jinn are said to manipulate energy, electricity, and signals. They may drain batteries, create static, and appear as shadows or distortions in recordings. Fort Mifflin, with its thick stone walls and old structures, creates an environment where such disturbances feel even more intense. There are stories of visitors taking photographs and later finding strange figures in the images. In one photo, a misty shape appears behind a group of tourists, shaped like a soldier with a hat. In another, a dark figure stands in a doorway that was empty during the photo. Some images show glowing orbs, streaks of light, or faces in the shadows that no one noticed in real life. These photos spread online, making many people believe that the fort is truly inhabited by unseen beings. Some people who take videos inside the fort say they feel someone watching them while recording. They hear whispers through their headphones, even when no one is speaking. Sometimes, their cameras suddenly turn toward a hallway or a corner, even when they did not move it, as if something invisible wanted to be noticed. Visitors also report strange physical sensations when recording. Their hands feel cold, their skin tingles, and their hearts start beating fast. Some feel sudden fear and stop recording, feeling as if something is standing right behind them. When they review the footage later, they see shadows or hear sounds that match the exact moment they felt fear, as if the unseen presence knew it was being recorded. There is a story of a paranormal group that left motion sensors inside one of the old cells. The sensors activated repeatedly during the night, showing movement in the empty room. When they checked the room, there was no one inside, but the temperature had dropped suddenly and their batteries were almost completely drained. On their audio recorder, they later heard a faint whisper saying, "Leave." Whether these disturbances are caused by ghosts, jinn, or natural phenomena, they add to the mystery of Fort Mifflin. The fort seems to react to those who try to uncover its secrets, as if the past does not want to stay silent, and the unseen world does not want to remain hidden. And so, Fort Mifflin remains more than just an old fort on the banks of a quiet river. It is a place where history breathes, where shadows remember, and where the unseen world may still walk beside the living. Every wall holds a story, every corridor holds a whisper, and every dark corner may be watching those who dare to enter. Some say the spirits of soldiers still guard the fort, unable to leave their duty behind. Others believe jinn roam freely through its tunnels, feeding on the memories of fear and pain left behind by centuries of human suffering. The question is not whether Fort Mifflin is haunted. The question is whether you would dare to walk its halls, after hearing these stories, to stand alone in its prison cells, to listen carefully when the footsteps begin behind you in the darkness. If you felt the suspense, if these unseen stories sent chills down your spine, then don't forget to share this speech with others who love mysteries, jinn stories, and haunted places. Subscribe to stay connected with more terrifying historical stories, paranormal speeches, and chilling true tales that blur the line between reality and the unseen world. And remember, sometimes the past never dies. It only waits in the shadows for someone to listen.